Great to be here. My goodness, is this an audience at a conference or is this a doctor's waiting room? Good afternoon, everybody. Let's make some noise. Okay, all right. Let's get some energy going in the room. Thank you. Thanks, Zach. Thank you, brother. Okay, what a fantastic panel I'm here with on the stage today. We are going to be talking about building seamless payment infrastructure across borders. Sounds boring. I promise you it's not. For those of you who are thinking about leaving, don't. It's going to be great. I think we're good. We all have a microphone? Everybody good? Everybody good? Are we good? Okay.
So far, so good.
So far, so good. All right, you've got us for 40 minutes. We are going to make this as educational, as informative, and as fun as we can. Your ticket got you that whole seat, but I promise you for the next 40 minutes, you are only going to need the edge of it. So we're going to make this as good as we can. I'm going to start by introducing myself. I'm going to let the gentlemen introduce themselves, and then I'm going to start firing some questions away at them. I'm Cal Evans. I'm the Managing Associate of Gresham International. For those of you who don't know me, I'm an international lawyer. I've also written a book. I speak a lot, and I'm proud to have been in this industry since about 2015. For those of you who do know me, please keep quiet and don't tell anybody anything. I'll let the gentlemen introduce themselves. We'll start this end and work our way down.
Thank you, Cal. Hello, everyone. My name is Dmytro Mamzeliev. I'm part of Visa Direct team. Our hub office based here in Dubai. I'm looking after the money movement. We call it Visa Direct, and I'm happy to be here to give you some insights of what's going on in the space of money movement. Thank you. Look forward.
Fantastic.
My turn. Hi, everyone. Rosa. I work at Rapyd. We're a payments company. We help our clients get paid by their clients and in turn pay their suppliers or their employees everywhere around the world. I'm responsible for the foreign exchange business, the wallets proposition, as well as the global payouts. Before that, I was a banker, so please don't hold that against me. I also went through the 0 to 1 journey of setting up a startup. It was a neobank headquartered in Hong Kong. We focused on helping SMBs pay their suppliers in China, which is very much about cross-border payments and infrastructure, so I'm looking forward to talk to you about that as well.
Fantastic.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yussif. I am the co-founder and CEO of FinFlx. I'm at the end of their supply chain. So we are a workplace savings plan. We pretty much basically use cross-border payments day to day. So we're built to utilize what they're building. I think I'm here to judge on the amount of innovation that happened before that. So happy to be here and happy to have the conversation with you all.
Fantastic. Thank you, gentlemen. So I guess, look, one of the first questions we should start talking about is perhaps in order to understand how we build a seamless infrastructure, what are some of the challenges that we face? I think you've all got a unique insight coming from startup, being an end user, so to speak, and helping people with more of a legacy firm. So I'd be very interested to hear about that from you chaps. Some of the challenges that you face, specifically around where you are positioned in the industry. Dmytro, I'm going to start with you, and then I'm going to work our way down, just for a little continuity. So.
Sure. When it comes to challenges in the cross-border that we are facing, right? Probably the cross-border experience of the cross-border payments, it was a bit clunky. If you want to send funds to the many different networks, you should manage multiple connections. And this is kind of quite extensive piece of work. So this is what I would probably call out. So what we see, it was the lack of single connection that might help you to deliver funds to whatever endpoints you might have in mind. So this is something that I would call out right now.
Dumb that down a little bit for us. When you talk about endpoints and things of that nature, what are you specifically referring to? For people that aren't in the payments industry, explain that a little bit more.
Sure, absolutely, right? So saying the endpoints, I mean the ideal picture we would like to, the ideal experience that our customer could enjoy is to be able to deliver funds to whatever endpoint, whatever credentials you have. It might be a Visa card number. It might be an account number, like using the IBAN or something else, right? It should be a digital wallet, definitely. That will guarantee you the best possible experience, not only focusing on only one channel, right? So this is the endpoints we are trying to come up with, and we are now can offer this to our clients, to our customers. So to support multiple endpoints with a single connection, which is give us in total around 8 billion customers that are able to receive funds through the Visa rails.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Dave?
Maybe take a step back and start with the why. Why seamless cross-border payments? Okay, and cross-border payments, something that should resonate for a lot of us here in Dubai, is very much the remittance business. You know, most of us will send some money back home, you know, each and every month, right? So that's been a big, you know, driver of the cross-border payments and make that a lot more seamless. The biggest growth, however, has been happening in the business space. Originally with e-commerce, right? That was basically making payments on the back of goods that were being sold. But now a lot of services, COVID really turbocharged this, you know, new phenomenon of the remote worker, okay? And so when you're paying a software developer, a marketing specialist, a consultant, the other side of the world, it's their lifeline. And it needs to be really seamless, as in instant, ideally. And this is where the challenges really start, because there are a lot of frictions. I'm sure we're going to be talking a lot about this, but there's multiple rails. I mean, Visa, by the way, do really, I mean it, a genuinely fantastic role at offering a real-time cross-border way of moving that money. But it's one of 4 rails, I would say, right? Primarily, you typically move money via the banking rails. And that is quite something. I mean, some of you, I'm sure, are very familiar with SWIFT. That is, you know, the original, you know, main method of moving money across, you know, the world. There are now local real-time payment systems that are, as they say, real-time. But the problem is that most of the time when you send money cross-border, you send money cross-currency as well. And converting that money in real time, let me give you an example. You're in New York, you wake up in the morning and you need to pay your supplier in Indonesia, let's say. Well, it's the end of the business day in Indonesia. You're not going to be able to make that payment in real time if you need to convert, because the Indonesian rupiah versus US dollar doesn't really trade 24/7, value same day. So this is one of the many things, I'm sure you're going to talk about a lot more details, that are, you know, getting in the way. So we mentioned card rails, bank rails. There are e-wallets. You know, there's more and more interoperability of e-wallets, particularly around the world in emerging markets. And then last but not least, cash. Okay? So you really need to optimize for these 4 different ways of moving money in the fiat world, by the way. There are obviously crypto ways of moving money as well. But that's what we do. We're in the fiat world, and we're very, very focused on making each and every one of those rails as seamless as possible.
Okay, very cool. Very good to know.
So, building up on the same momentum that they discussed, before it was only like moving money across borders was mainly in this region was about remittance, but now enabling businesses. There is a whole range of businesses that wouldn't have existed or wouldn't exist efficiently if it wasn't for an efficient cross-border payment infrastructure. And I say that because as I highlighted, I'm at the end of their supply chain. We use their rails day in and day out, and we have to deal with the good and the bad, sometimes painful process of SWIFT, as you highlighted. Different currency exchanges. It was before about customer experience. Fintech was innovating more of an appealing UI, more appealing user experience. But now there is a huge line of businesses that is being enabled by making this digital payment across border. 6 months ago, a year ago, nobody would have known that you could pay your remote workers. You could hire people completely in a different country. You could pay your suppliers. We all used to receive invoices attached with bank details, and you have to add that bank as a beneficiary and send that money, and it takes 3 to 5 days, and finance teams keep like arguing with each other back and forth on the confirmation. Right now it's very easily, you receive the invoice with a payment link and you just pay your supplier immediately on time and everything goes seamlessly. So it's enabling these businesses that wouldn't happen before. However, there is, in terms of cross-border payments, because of the deep challenges, you're talking about different countries, different regulations, different railways, as you highlighted. There is a lot of work that needs to be done. Locally, I think we've done a big leap of innovation. Cross-border, we still have a lot to go. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, great. So it sounds like it's a combination of things like latency, different market times, managing those 4 different rails. Those are some of the challenges that you guys are really facing at the moment. Perhaps to understand a little bit more about that, we could talk maybe about how the landscape has shifted over the last 5 to 10 years. What are the biggest things that have changed, and what have you certainly seen as people that are in the industry, and how those changes will impact people that are using these services. David, I'm going to start with you. Maybe this is a good one for you to start with.
And I'll start with the tech side of fintech. This is really what has been, revolutionizing the industry in the last decade plus, and the advent of the API. Okay, I think to deliver this experience, again, seamless experience across many different rails, across different currencies, you need an interface, and typically it's one of two interfaces that you get. One, which is your client portal, your website that you go to and you interact, you interface, and you need to have a delightful user experience these days. People get lost. They don't have the patience to use your product when they get lost. So something very intuitive, very easy to use if it is a web kind of interface. Increasingly, however, what we're seeing is, brands that are basically building payments, cross-border seamless payments, into their own experience, into their own app, into their own websites. And so for that, they do it via the quote-unquote backend, via an API. And there you really need to have a truly one integration, right? And there's so many different endpoints. It's so fragmented in the background, and delivering that one endpoint that truly is not like a spaghetti junction, for lack of a better word, for the developers, the software developers of those clients who want to build their brand and embed this in the past, has been really the major development and something that we've really been pioneering very, very strongly.
Very cool. Very cool. Do you see that as an industry standard, or is that something specific to you guys?
There isn't yet. It's a very good question. There isn't yet an industry standard. I wouldn't be surprised if it eventually becomes one. It really, the moment you open that hood, you go, oh, you really want to close it, right? It's very, there's so much, again, Visa managed to build its own network on top of all these different clearing houses, if you're familiar with this concept of basically how money ultimately settles in each and every jurisdiction, in fact, in each and every currency in those jurisdictions. And it's really like a major, major feat to sew it all together and deliver this seamlessly into, a few lines of code.
No, very cool.
So I think one of the important aspects of managing the cross-border payments is the fragmentation, as David highlighted. But also, and I'm sorry to say that, but there is something that needs to happen to make that seamless, like end-to-end cross-border payments. It's the concept of the middleman. We have a lot of middlemen, and a lot of business models were built this way. So for you to come up one day and invent a digital currency that will allow you to move the money from point A to point B instantly with a very small margin, which is an amazing user experience because you don't need to pay a lot of middlemen. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that usually not get spoken about. And what we need to see, and Visa has done a lot of work on that, is to actually collect all of these middlemen and create a scheme that would make it profitable for everybody, because now you're not eating a large part of a small cake. It's actually a bigger cake and enabling a lot of these rails to move. So we're trying to collect all these middlemen and consolidate them. And we see some successes happening regionally, because again, when you deal with a global provider like what Visa does, some products wouldn't be available in our region just because the infrastructure for them is not ready yet. So I see them pushing. I see a lot of innovation sandboxes, and along with MasterCard, they both are pushing on both fronts just to get the regulator to be comfortable into collecting all of these into one scheme that could actually work for everybody. So for everybody on the stage, when you see something that says transfer money or like pay here, understand that there are like at least 11 or 12 steps behind that. Authentication, identification of yourself and the vendor that you're paying. A lot of work that goes behind that. And between these layers, there are a lot of middlemen. Someone is making like half a cent or a cent on every dollar that you send, and is not going to give up that easily. So we now need to create the infrastructure that would say, Mr. Middleman, we need to readjust the model because now clients are not happy anymore and you're eating off their margins. So I think that's one of the big challenges that we don't speak about, but everybody's working on. Yeah. Starting from our end, from their end, and all the way through until it gets to the end user.
Yeah. Do you think, in terms of changes over the last few years, do you think that's been the biggest? Do you think you've seen that, interruption? I'll use the word interruption of middlemen. Do you think that's changed a lot over the last 10 years? And if it has, do you feel like there's more or less?
In my opinion, absolutely. So the concept of CDC, like a tokenized dollar, that you can just move it over like anytime, like 24/7, so you don't have to rely on the Swift reconciliation, on the settlement. structure T+1 or T+2. That disrupted everyone. And you can see, like, usually in Europe caught up on this quite very, very efficiently. In Asia, that become now the normal. Actually, in Asia, you don't move money like through exchanges. It's normal to use digital currency as the main form of payment. And that disrupted everyone, banks included, fintechs included. Central banks had to adapt to that change. I would say this is where the future is going. Even under like scrutiny and regulation, everybody used to think like, blockchain and digital currency is just like to smuggle money and out of compliance. No, there are multiple compliant ways to do it efficiently, and now everybody's more focused on the efficiency of it. We're seeing central banks now heavily invested in this kind of protocols and infrastructures, which what David said, kind of builds. Blockchain is bringing everybody together on the same level, where we have the interface where all the platforms talk to each other in a simplified way, and we can all deal efficiently.
Yeah. No, awesome. Thank you. Dmytro.
Thank you. By the way, very good point. I would prefer call it not a disruption, but UI UX improvement, user journey improvement rather than...
Exactly. Continuous improvement.
Turn it into positive. Anyways, my initial thought was something different to say, but built on top of what you were saying, it's very good to know. That's definitely, Visa was one of the first companies who opened the API and our developer portal for everyone.
Yes.
Now, but what is, I think, more important, coming back to the initial question, what the trends, what the shift happening last couple of years, right?
Yep.
That was the question.
Correct. Yep.
What I see when I came to Dubai maybe 6 years back, cash was dominating in terms of remittance, cash-based remittance, cash over the counter, and the COVID happening with the shift of the client habits, where their branches have been closed. You remember that time. You have simply zero chance to bring your cash and to send funds. That was very bad. I remember back then. And all this pushed the digitalization first. So who were able to provide the digital experience become a leader of the industry. And this is the biggest shift I would call out. So the digitalization of the remittance itself, of the payments itself. So that's something that we need to keep our eye on, and to be at the same level of speed that people want to send funds. 24/7 from everywhere you are, so we don't want to wait 5 seconds to skip the ad on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
So that's why people don't want to. They want the money arrived immediately.
Sure.
And this is the trend I would call out now. Yeah, I think that is.
Absolutely. So we've spoken a little bit about some of the challenges, what's happened over the last period of time. Let's pull out our crystal ball. Let's talk about the future. Let's take one of the things we've touched on very briefly is regulatory. Actually, I like that you kept speaking about regulation. Maybe let's flow into a little regulatory vein as we answer this question. What do we think the industry is going to look like with a focus on cross-border payments over the next 5-10 years? You can infer in crypto, or maybe you think crypto has no place, or maybe it'll go centralized in some kind of stable currency issued by a bank, central bank authority. I'm interested to see, and I can see some nervous faces as well. It's okay, guys. There's no wrong answer here. What do you think is going to happen in the future? Dmytro, I'm going to start with you, and then we'll work our way down.
Okay, if I should put it just in one word, I would foresee the key word for the future will be a partnership.
Okay.
The partnership will define and design the future of payments.
Okay.
Yes, the partnership between all the players. It might be some unexpected, the partnership from different areas.
Okay.
But and we as Visa, we believe in partnership. Actually, that's why we are here. Okay. And the mind shift that is happening last years, it clearly shows that world is moving in the direction of removing the borders.
Okay.
I'll give you an example for that, right? We as Visa, before that, we are strictly stick to the financial institutions, to the banks only. Now, Visa is very open, and we have a lot of tools to support non-financial institutions, so Fintech startups, right? With the multiple ways of doing this. through our partner, through our traditional partners, enablers, acquirers, or even direct membership to the companies now open.
Yep.
So if you're a regulated company, according to the local regulation, and you would like to join and enjoy the Visa payment infrastructure, you can do that directly, without being a bank. It's something that you can't imagine 5 years back. So partnership, this is the word for me, I think.
Can I take it to the next
Of course.
level? Okay, in three building blocks. The first one is that I think any respectable fintech disruptor or otherwise has learned a lot of lessons. Okay, I think the moment we're talking about compliance, we were joking about this just before this panel that ignorance is bliss in many ways, right? Sometimes you really find it refreshing to talk to somebody who has no idea about the industry because they're just seeing it very purely. Okay, and ideally this is what should be happening, but then there's always a why. In fact, many whys, things don't work that way necessarily. And this to say that, again, I myself have gone through several learned lessons, right, on how to really work with the regulators to make sure that it's the right balance between, yes, disruption, better experience for the client, and yet continuing to be remaining compliant and using the latest tools to do so, not having humans always oversee a particular transaction that's been monitored, for example. That's the first one. The second one, as you mentioned, opening up to non-banks, okay? This is, I think, the theme, if I were to take a shot at the next decade, where non-banks are going to have increasingly more seat at the table, okay? And what do I mean by this? My third point, before I was mentioning this spaghetti junction, whenever money eventually clears and settles, it goes through a clearinghouse. Clearinghouses are basically clubs. And the members of those clubs, by and large, are banks. Non-banks are not allowed, okay? And I think this is likely to change a lot. We already have some hints to that. You can see it in the UK with British pound. You can see it in the SEPA region with the euro, where non-banks have an ability to be direct members of the clearing system. And I think this is going to be a thematic through the next decade going forward.
Very interesting.
To add on both, so you left me till the end to put me in the hard part. Usually, I come from a fintech, and in the fintech, you think of the best solution for the user and work your way backwards. And when you're working your way, you stumble upon, it's like Alice in Wonderland. And I always believe that fintechs are innovation in fintech is two halves. Ones that create the user experience, and the ones that go back to the beginning and invent the things that are needed to get that user experience, including payment railways. So you think of, I want to enable people to invest easily in their future and have a portfolio and manage their retirement, etc. But while building this, you figure out that, oh my God, there are 4 or 5 things that are broken in that flow. Somebody goes and chooses one of these, and that becomes on its own a fintech to do that. But also, in the background of all of this, you go to the regulators. Because the regulators is the same as us, they are trying to innovate, but in terms of the law or the rules that didn't exist before. Before, it used to be a person in front of a teller presenting their identification, taking their money or signing a document. Now you have to do all of that digitally, and becomes like they have to fight fraud, they have to fight authentication, and all of these things. We're regulated by the FSRA and ADGM, and they usually hold these sessions where they actually ask us questions. People think that the regulators, figured it all out, they just put the law and rules. Most of the time, they actually ask about what could potentially be the challenges and what can we do to fix these challenges. So it's not like partnerships, yes, opening to non-banks, and we see also regulators kind of shaping a framework where, again, the middleman, on the same concept of the middleman, forcing the banks to work with non-banks to deliver the service to a group of people that didn't exist before. We all talk now about, since COVID, about financial inclusion, about digitization, about making it accessible and inclusive. The regulators now are forcing banks to open their APIs, and just about a couple of months ago, we had the open banking infrastructure open in the UAE. Before, it was in Saudi as well. So you see across the region where banks are now being forced to open up their gates, to put a seat on the big boys' table, to other innovators that will capitalize on the banking as a service and make it more accessible to a whole group of people that didn't happen before, or to make a service that was very cumbersome like you moving money to your brother or cousin across borders, to make that as seamless as possible. And that's why we see a lot of wallets happening. So a lot of innovation happen, a lot of regulatory reinvention happens, and a lot of partnerships are now being forged to make that more possible, if I may.
Interesting. Okay. So do we think, and if we take a look at this specific region, the GCC region, what do we feel that's being done very well here right now? Because we're all based here, we're all focusing on this region. What do we think is being done very well right now? I'm going to let you start, because I let you finish last time, so you can start this time.
Well, it's quite obvious to everybody. The digital adoption in the GCC region in general is fantastic. The idea of mobile penetration. Everybody now, regardless of what spectrum you are in the society, everybody has a smartphone. Everybody's very familiar with using apps. The government has connected a lot of digital railways to make it work. We have something here that a lot of first world countries don't have, which is like UAE Pass. You have your Emirates ID that is connected to everything. Your water is connected to it, your phone is connected to it, everything is connected to that. For fintechs, for regulators, that's fantastic. That's a lot of railways that other countries need to build. It's already fully integrated with us. I think the idea of digital adoption is the enabler for everything else that will need to happen. So that's one of the things that I think key success that we've done here. Over to you.
Look, I mean, I think I would like to pick up on something you said at the very beginning on the cross-border side of things. Because as a consumer here in the UAE, so by background, I lived 23 years in Hong Kong. So you mentioned Asia. I've lived and been breathing Asia for many years.
That happen.
And seen it happen, and you know, moving away from like cash to e-wallets with nothing in the middle, right? So it's been really very enlightening from that point of view. However, the banking rails in a lot of the countries, I would say the very large majority, Hong Kong included, by the way, they're older school, right? Yeah. And so when I came here and I started using my, consumer banking app, it was a wow kind of experience, to be honest. Being able to link my, utility bill to make sure that payments were coming in and out and like in real time domestically, wow, really amazing. Cross-border, it's a bit expensive, let me put it this way. And when you have, a workforce that 90% is not local, that needs to be doing remittance, this is where the middleman and the opportunity, and of course the partnerships, right? Because there's a reason. There's a lot of whys, things are like this. This is where I think there is an opportunity, let's call it this way, to really do it very well, especially so if you want Dubai, the UAE, to be this hub, right, for commerce ultimately.
Yep. Yeah. Actually, I'll share with you guys, if I may, an anecdotal story, if you guys will humor me for a second. The last time I flew here a few months ago, I actually got out of the Uber at the airport in Chicago and completely forgot my wallet. It was about 3 a.m. And sounds a bit daunting, right? Oh my goodness, I forgot my wallet. But I was flying to the UAE and I had my phone with me, which you all probably saw me drop earlier, and it's still working, thank goodness. And I knew for the first time it didn't matter. I had everything I needed, including for payments, sitting right here. And actually, from that point onwards, I kind of realized my wallet is a little bit surplus to requirement. I don't need it for anything anymore. So it's very interesting to see from a pure consumer perspective how much life has changed. So just what you guys are talking about, putting it into actuality is kind of really interesting. But sorry, Dmytro, thank you for letting me kind of jump in on that anecdote.
No.
I got my wallet back, by the way, if anybody cares. My wallet was not in the back of a taxi in Chicago, or an Uber, sorry, in Chicago.
Now it's my probably time to make a step back, right? And what I see that happening, the overall positioning Middle East and UAE and Dubai itself as a leading hub for payment-related companies, I would call it Paytech probably. Now it's a worldwide brand. UAE, Dubai, and this festival, this summit in particular, right? Because I'm covering 87 countries of CEMEA region, and it's very well known everywhere. So all innovators that we can, by the way, see on other rooms as well, right? Yeah. All the pioneers in payments, and a lot of companies started their journey from here. So this is the big shift, and this is a very well done, amazingly done for GCC overall, not only Dubai, Saudi now. Yep. It's also a very interesting market to look for.
you see a lot of, and I always like using the European Union as a benchmark, do you see a lot of similarities between different regions and how they operate from a cross-border payments perspective, or do you see different regions tackling it very differently? And I mean that in a very consumer-based sense, right? I don't know, I know in the European Union, I can take my debit card and I can use euros in, you know, multiple different countries very easily. I come here and I'm not able to use the same currency, but it feels like there's still a very seamless integration of technology. So what regions, focusing away from this region, what regions do you think are tackling it well? What are they specifically deploying to make that happen? David, I'm going to start with you in the middle.
Thank you. I think the Eurozone with SEPA, yep. Which this is basically the layer, it's an abstraction layer on top of all the different domestic clearing and settlement systems across the Eurozone and more, right? Because actually the UK, for example, is a member of SEPA. You have places like Gibraltar that are member of SEPA. Some islands in the Caribbean are members of SEPA, some French colonies. So it's actually a really, really interesting blueprint to use if we were to have a regional payment system. And there's a common currency, right? That makes it easier, mind you. But it is, I think, the blueprint to be inspired by, I would say.
Sure. Oh, good.
I think, again, the Eurozone it's a function of how it was built. It was built to be that integrated. Yeah. But I would say in Southeast Asia, we see now Corridor, Brazil, Argentina. It's like they are doing a lot of work cross-border. And it's showing now in the enablement of their economy. And I see it, you cover a lot of areas, a lot of regions, and you smiled as soon as I saw that, because that's the sleeping giant that not a lot of people talk about. Everybody talks about Southeast Asia and a lot of the innovation that is happening in Hong Kong, Malaysia, all of these areas. But believe me, in South America, there is a lot of work that is happening right now. And personally, as a founder of a fintech company, this is where I look a couple of steps ahead of what barriers they broke, because there is a lot of similarities between our ecosystem and their ecosystem in terms of railways. Yep. So you keep an eye on this, because this is where sometimes they skip what the European Union has done a couple of steps back, because now they're facing a different challenge and solving it with today's solutions, not with yesterday's solutions, in my opinion.
I do love the fact you said, I flew to here from Brazil, and I was at a conference a week ago in Brazil. And it's really interesting to see that LATAM region and how they tackle problems. And what's very interesting is, the reason I raise it, is because everybody almost has a blueprint that they follow. Yeah. So I feel like LATAM follows the GCC. GCC kind of looks a little bit about what Asia's doing. Asia kind of looks at Europe, and then they all kind of look at each other in turn. And I think that's really cool. I think in this industry, that's a particularly cool thing.
That's the one thing that goes cross-border. Innovation goes cross-border very seamlessly, very easily, and for free.
Yep, which is fantastic. What is interesting as well, and I promise I'm going to let you answer the question, is to see that socio-economic shift. When you look at the considerations, I think that there is a bigger consideration in some regions based on the population, and in other regions based on banking and financial institutions. And I would argue and say that Europe is very banking and financial heavy. They focus a lot on their infrastructure. Let's keep the banks happy, let's keep the top level happy. Whereas I think the GCC does a fantastic region at focusing on citizens and civilians' needs as well. What do the people need? Mm-hmm. And I think LATAM kind of is even a lower step, and they're like, well, we need to do what people need, so let's just get it done, and we'll worry about the regulation later. So I think it's really, if you're ever interested in seeing that trend, looking at it, how it goes across the world, is a very cool thing to do. So thank you for raising that. That was a very interesting point. Richard?
Yeah, you left me almost without examples that you mentioned already, so I will use my card in the sleeve.
My time wisely.
Yeah. So maybe I'll call out the experience of CIS country, since I came from Ukraine. And the biggest shock for me when I came to Dubai was the checkbook that I've been given by my bank. I was like, all right, what's that? How to use this? Yeah. You know, I never ever saw it in my life before. Only in the movies, in the old movies, right? So, but coming back now seriously, a lot of companies, because of the UAE itself position as a hub, a lot of companies from that part of the world now operating here, and I saw many clients even today, and they bringing the best thing from the CIS regions. That, and they're very, let's say, they're very efficient in digital payments when it comes, even domestic and cross-border as well.
Yeah.
So, and this, it seems that GCC and UAE picks only the best thing from each and every geography by inviting the right companies, the right startups to run their business from here. And I think this is the way to go. And again, partnerships, it's all about this.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. We have got 4 minutes left, give or take. I'm going to open the floor to some questions. You guys happy with questions coming in? Cool. Sure. Does anybody have any questions for our panelists? Do not be shy. You can ask any questions. This was very keen. You can. Do we have a in microphone, or should we just shout? Bear with us 1 second, sir.
Do we give them one of ours and we share one?
Yeah, I can give.
Yeah. Should we? Do we have one? No. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello. Dmytro, Commercial Bank of Dubai, and I have a question about central bank digital currencies, in particular cross-border CBDC networks. So my question is, are those networks a part of your agenda now? And if they are, do you see them as future rivals or something that you can leverage on your business? Thank you.
Interesting.
I'll gladly take that one. Thank you.
Remember, before you answer, he's from the central bank. So.
Yes, sure. Hi. So I'll just repeat the question that I think I understood, and you tell me if that's the case. So whether we see opportunity, and if so, what angle of opportunity do we see in CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, and the development that's happening in that space? Is that correct? Cross-border networks. Okay, so CBDC and cross-border network. Two things. One, I'd like to come back to the point I was making before. I think, selfishly, I would like to see non-banks being able to be members and clearers, effectively, of CBDCs. So that, to me, is otherwise, it's a solution looking for a problem for me, right? Two, foreign exchange, because it's all very well to have, sovereignty on your own, digital currency. But when it comes time to cross into a different currency, which is most likely going to be the case unless we are going to be only CBDC in dollars, and no wonder the US hasn't really been playing at this game. It's a lot of non-dollar countries that have been, pushing for this. You're going to have to convert it. And who's going to do that? Who's going to be the one platform, neutral platform, that's going to do that? That's the elephant in the room in my mind. Because I think you're going to need the private sector, and there's a lot of, for lack of a better word, politics there, right? Because if you have that bank, you cannot have the other bank. And, that's going to be, I think, the one to solve. In the meantime, we continue to disrupt.
Yeah. Thank you, David. Are there any other questions?
What you say about the CBDCs, it will be actually the global banks' adoption. If there are many banks globally accepting, so I think most of the time people get confused with CBDC. CBDC is just a digital form of physical currencies. They are not anything related with blockchain or so on. So if every country has that, then your borders will work automatically. Maybe some countries they will have now, or some countries they still need to adapt, or they still want to do a survey how it is going to help them or not. So that could be a barrier, but otherwise...
Very fair point. The way that I interpret this is basically saying that the clearing system for a particular currency is 24/7, right? Instead of like a 9 to 5. Mexico already has that. What do we need CBDCs?
Yeah.
that's my only point.
And I would just interject, I think as the crypto expert on stage, it's a fair statement, unless anybody professes, CBDC, using a blockchain form, whatever blockchain, that actually gets rid of a lot of the middlemen we've spoken about. It's one of the harmonizing effects of using that specific technology set is that it gets rid of, it's self-ledgering, self-reflecting, so you've got the ability to remove a number of middlemen. But there is, and David raised a very good point, you then in the FX world get onto benchmarking. How do you benchmark other currencies against each other? Because that formula in today's modern age is actually very complicated. We used to do it based on the everybody together, gold standard. We left that a long time ago. So now benchmarking is actually done on a very sophisticated liquidity versus transaction pool versus reserves versus, it's very complicated. How do you do that with CBDCs? Nobody's ever answered that question as to how do I know what my digi dollar, US dollar, is worth on my digi pound because, well, the networks are different and they don't communicate with each other. So that's very confusing. That's a very good point, sir. So thank you for that. Are there any other questions with our 10 seconds left? In that case then, I would love for you guys, first of all, thank you for enjoying this. This has been fantastic. I want to thank our panelists. I would like you guys to make some serious noise because this was great. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Catch up with our panelists afterwards if you have any questions for them. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of the